Welcome to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold, and this is the second part of today's video. Let's just go right ahead and dig in it. Alright, so I've taken this tensioner hinge. It's not bolted down, but got it constructed, got it where it swivel all the way to upright. I've got the hinge fitted where it actually works in the directions that we want to go. Not if the bolt fall out of there, didn't I? So we're nearing the part where this piece can be fitted and determine if it's ready to be painted. There. Alright. Let the bolt fall out of there. But anyway, the next thing to do, I believe, is probably going to be to make the spring that goes on here. And I've got to get a bolt to go in there for the handle. I haven't done that yet. I made a mistake drilling the hole. Drilled it out a 1/2 inch without realizing that I needed to thread it. So I made it a 9/16 threaded hole. So I've got to get a 9/16 threaded bolt, which I don't have any bolts that size around here. I've got it ready for the motor to bolt on. So once all of that's really ready to go, I can start trying to make the what I think he calls the platen part of it. And the platen will contain the 2 little idler wheels that hold the belt on that end. And I haven't made those 2 little wheels yet, so that's another thing I've got to make. But I think for right now, I'm pretty well caught up on the welding. I'm going to try to use square tubing and such to make the platen so that I can cut down on the amount of welding. I don't like welding. It warps things. Then you have to bend stuff to make it fit right. So I'm going to try to get out of as much welding as I can. That platen has got a whole bunch of pieces to it if you weld it up. Whereas if I make it out of square tubing, it's not going to have a lot of pieces. For some reason that bolt's kind of a tight fit into that hinge. Something I thought straighten out after I've got finished welding. But I did weld it, something to point with. I did weld it here, and then I welded it here and here, and then I turned the hinge a little bit to see that I had, reassure myself that I hadn't welded this to this or this to this, and I didn't. So when it cools enough that I can turn it up like that and see up underneath there, I'll finish adding a little bit of weld here and there just to make sure that these 2 pieces here are strong. I've got a feeling I've probably got enough on here to hold that. It's just the 2 little ones that may not be strong enough. This is the other side of the hinge where I tacked down the 2 little pieces. And I was kind of worried because that looks like you're right up against the middle piece there. But it didn't stick to it, so that's good. And it got plenty of hot because it changed the color of that center piece. It was silver like everything else, and now it's blue. So I guess I didn't have to put it in the oven to blue it, did I? Now what I've got to do is I've got to wait till the stuff cools off enough that I can turn the hinge, because it seized up on that bolt pretty tight once I started welding it. And it was already tight, so I have to let the expansion shrink back. I taped together 4 washers in little clumps of 2 and stuck them between there as a spacer. You can see the glue from the tape, or the tape itself where it melted right there. But that was the only way I could hold the washers and clamp that thing together all at the same time. I'm sure that plastic will clean off there really quick with a flat disc. But everything's looking good, and I guess since I gotta let it cool, I might as well knock off for the day. And tomorrow I gotta go back to the dentist and get my stitches out, and who knows what else. And then the boss lady's got a beauty shop appointment in the afternoon, so if I get to work on this tomorrow, it'll be way late tomorrow evening, sometime after 6, I'm sure. Alright, so the tensioner for the belt, is the hinge part of it, is done. I have a piece to go on here that's going to be a fork type design, and I started on it last week, but I've still got to finish cutting the little, it's going to have a U shape over here, and I've got to cut that out. And considering that I can't get that size bolt anywhere, although I haven't tried Fastenal yet, I may have to make my own bolt for there, just because I messed up and made it a size larger than it ought to be. Okay, so it's off to the milling machine to cut a 5/8 slot in that guy right there, and weld him onto here so that he'll be the pressure point to swing that guy down. I'll have to look at the drawings really good to make sure I put that in the right spot, huh? So now then we'll just slot this guy, get in between the lines pretty much, and we'll be ready to weld it on. We now have a nice slot. I can deburr it and take it over there and set it up for welding it onto the hinge. Alright, so this is the tensioner adjustment. I think it has plenty of movement to change the tracking with. If it's not enough movement, I can always take it apart and, well, it's hard to move there sometimes. There. You can always take it apart and grind off a little bit of this in here to make it fit even better. The welds sort of grow out to get in the way here and there, but I think that looks like it's going to work. This is something I don't like about the Bosch. The motor decelerates faster than the grinding wheel, and the grinding wheel will unscrew. Doesn't seem like the right way to build it. Now this isn't going to be the axle for this wheel. I bought bolts for the job, and I don't really know where they're at right now. But this, once I put the bolt in here, this will adjust the tracking on the, well, the tracking wheel. So there you go. But I've got to find a bolt to go in here. I made that a 9/16/16. That's not exactly a well-known bolt, so I may have to make that piece. But we're getting closer to actually comparing all this stuff the way it's going to be. Alright, so on to the next step. This farmer drove up to Bubba's house in his pickup truck. Little Bubba, one about 9 years old, he come to the door and says, "Howdy, what can I do for you?" And the guy says, is your dad here?" Bubba says, "Nope, he went to town." Farmer says, "Well," he says, "is your mom here?" Little Bubba says, "No, she went to town with Dad." He stood there a minute thinking on it, shifting one foot to the other. He says, "Well," he says, "is your brother Howard here?" Bubba says, "No, he went to town with Mom and Dad." And so the farmer's standing there kind of uncomfortable, you know, shifting around, looking around. Well, anyway, little Bubba, he says, is there anything I can do for you? I know where all the tools are if you want to borrow one.
or I could take a message for Dad, you know. And Farmer says, well, he says, I really want to talk to your dad. He says, it's about your brother Howard getting my daughter Pearlie Mae pregnant. And so little Bubba, he thought about that for a minute, and he says, you'd have to talk to Paul about that. If it helps you any, I know that Paul charges $500 for the bull and $50 for the hog, but I really don't know how much he gets for Howard. Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.